Welcome to AUDL Weekly. After a one-week break, we are refreshed and ready to go with a program all about ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more. I'm Evan Lepler, and we're coming down the stretch of the AUDL season with so much going on in the ultimate world. The World Games underway from Birmingham, Alabama, with several past and present AUDL stars competing. And obviously the playoff push in the AUDL is getting quite exciting, particularly with everything that happened this past weekend. So, on the show tonight, Adam and Daniel rejoin me for a spicy and spirited disc debate. And Minnesota's Nick Vogt is Matt Smith's guest for Upline and Out of Bounds. But before all that, gotta be honest, the fastest 3 minutes in Frisbee might have to be 4 or 5, maybe even 6 minutes today, because this past weekend was crazy. All the details coming up on the toss. You're watching AUDL Weekly on AUDL.tv, so stick around. All right, welcome back. Week 11 was, without question, one of the most exciting weekends of the entire AUDL season. 7 of the 11 games decided by 3 goals or fewer, including 3 that were decided by 1. Let's start with Atlanta's road trip to Texas. Hustle knew they could virtually clinch a playoff spot if they won both games, but Atlanta had never before swept the Texas two-step. In fact, only one team has ever won back-to-back games on consecutive days in Texas. 2017 Jacksonville Cannons, and that Florida team still stands alone because Atlanta needed overtime on Friday in Dallas. Hustle came through in the clutch moments in that bonus period, winning 17-14 to deny the Legion their first win of the year. But one night later in Austin, Hustle actually had a 4-goal fourth quarter lead, but the heat combined with the soul pressure caught up with them in the game's most important moments. Austin closes the game on a phenomenal 6-1 run. Kyle Henke catching the go-ahead goal with just 32 seconds left. And Austin victorious 18-17 to seize control of the 2 spot in the South Division. Austin's now 7-3. Final 2 games, both at home against winless Dallas and winless Tampa. If the Soul can take care of business, they'll be 9-3 and heading to Carolina for the South Championship game in August. And for the Hustle, man, what a heartbreaking way to finish the weekend. They now need some help from the winless Legion or Cannons if they are going to dream of the playoffs this August. Speaking of heartbreaking, the Philadelphia Phoenix. They felt firmly in control in their fourth quarter at DC on Friday night, but a slew of late execution mistakes opened the door for the Breeze, and in the closing seconds, Joe Richards nearly dropped the game-winning goal, but the Breeze big man hangs on, keeps the disc up, and that turned out to be the difference. For the second straight week, DC over Philly by 1. That wraps up the 2 spot for the Breeze, and now Philly still with work to do to earn the last available playoff spot in the East. Phoenix are 4-5 on the year. Boston, Montreal, and Toronto also all have 4 wins apiece. Now, Philly has more opportunities left to win, but the burden is on them to get the job done. Some tough games at Toronto, home versus New York. We'll see what the Phoenix can do. What a season it's been for Philly. Their 5 losses by a total of 6 goals, 4 of them by 1, including the last 2 against the Breeze. But, as I said, still time to rewrite that narrative if you are Philly. Elsewhere, doubleheader weekend for the Salt Lake Shred, and for the second time this season, the Shred sweep 2 straight on the road. Salt Lake surviving by 1, 25-24 in Seattle on Friday night, and then the Shred clobbered Portland 28-14 on the second night of the back-to-back. Clear roadmap to 10-2 regular season for Salt Lake. They got 3 games left. They're firmly in control of the 2 spot in the West behind Colorado. Other most meaningful Week 11 result transpired Sunday evening in Madison. Radicals hand the Minnesota Wind Chill their first loss since the season opener, snapping Minnesota's 7-game win streak. They jumped in front early, hung on for the 21-18 victory win. A bigger deal for Madison, that loss, than the not loss necessarily was for Minnesota. Radicals now in position to virtually clinch a playoff spot if they can beat Indy at home this Friday. Really big game. Radicals, AlleyCats this Friday. Winchell have a pretty big game too. They still control their destiny in pursuit of winning the division, but they need to right the ship quick. FS2 game of the week this Saturday night against Chicago at Seafoam Stadium in St. Paul. Really looking forward to that. Meanwhile, the 2021 championship weekend teams that were in action this weekend all dominated. Carolina crushing Tampa Bay 20-11. Flyers are now 10-1. New York blasting Boston 32-18 beatdown to improve the Empire to 11-0. And Chicago's now 7-1 after the Union Cruise passed the AlleyCats 23-15. Chicago down early in that game, but they rolled in the second half over Indianapolis. Of course, there was also a Thursday night AUDL game this week, and the Ottawa Outlaws get their second win of the season, knocking off Montreal 23-20. Been a strange season of ups and downs for all three Canadian teams in the East Division. And lastly, one more to mention on the Week 11 slate. The Detroit Mechanix had a 10-6 first half lead on the road in Pittsburgh. But if they had beaten this streak, you better believe they would have been featured much earlier in this segment. Thunderbirds stormed back to win by 3. 22-19 was the final. Mechanix dropped to 0-9 in the season, and they've now lost 59 consecutive games, which as of yesterday, their last win came 1,900 days ago in April of 2017, which just remains wild to say. Alrighty, that's the Week 11 rundown recap. Adam and Daniel coming up next as we keep it rolling here on AUDL Weekly. Back on AUDL Weekly, and we welcome in Adam Ruffner and Daniel Cohen. Gentlemen, good to see you both. These are the two hosts of the Swing Pass podcast that you can listen to twice every week. Toss up today. Adam, let's start with you. A bunch of great games this past weekend, a bunch of excruciating losses. Who had the most excruciating Week 11 loss, Adam? The Philadelphia Phoenix at DC or the Atlanta Hustle at Austin?
Man, this is a tough one. And for as brutal as the Philly loss was on Friday night in DC, the second time in as many weeks that they've lost by 1 goal to their quote-unquote rivals in DC, I've got to go with Atlanta. I mean, they had control of that game through 3 quarters, and then their legs just kind of gave out in that Texas heat in the second night of a back-to-back, and I think they essentially lost their ability to get into the playoffs this year with that defeat in Austin. It was a backbreaker for them, and I think especially so given how well that defense had contained the Soul through 3 quarters. They played really impressively given the absences that the Hustle were experiencing in their lineup, and they just could not shut the door on Austin's comeback. So I'm going to go with the Hustle.
Daniel?
It's the playoff implications for me. I mean, this was absolutely a must-win game for Atlanta. The only way they can make the playoffs still is if Austin loses to either Dallas or Tampa Bay at home in Austin, which are their 2 remaining games.
Winless team.
Other than that, I mean, yeah, 2 winless teams is all Austin has to beat to lock up that 2 seed. It was 16-12 in the 4th quarter after a really long, 2.5-minute point that Atlanta ultimately held on. But I want to give a lot of credit to Austin. They had to play perfectly from that point on, and they did. 0 turnovers on either side of the disc. They would get the disc back and then immediately punch in scores down the stretch. It was a super impressive win for them, but just a back-breaking loss. Considering the potential this Atlanta team had coming into the season, I think a lot of us penciled them in for that 2 seed right off the bat, but it's looking like it's Austin's 2 seed now. So yeah, very, very much a heartbreaker for both Atlanta and Philly this week.
I just want to add,
interesting thing might
this
be
Atlanta team is so talented that in talking with people after their defeat on Saturday night, there was a sigh of relief around the South Division about Atlanta having that setback, because Carolina and Austin know that a fully loaded Hustle team is something to fear this season. We just haven't really seen it yet, and we're in the middle of July.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to say, I think deep down, Carolina would probably rather face Austin in the playoffs than Atlanta. But one thing we should mention, tough break for the Hustle. They had 3 or 4 starters down with COVID this week, and that certainly stung the Hustle's effort in terms of having their full team.
Absolutely.
So sometimes that's just the way it happens in these days. All right, let's move on. Topic number 2, the Salt Lake Shred for the second time this year go 2-0 on a road trip weekend, winning in Seattle and in Portland. They dominated in Portland. So, Daniel, I ask you, which Salt Lake line was better on Saturday against the Nitro? The Shred O that was only broken once, or the Shred D that produced 15 breaks against the Portland O-line?
I think I'm going to go with the D here, and they were missing a couple really key defenders in Joel Clutton and Ben Dusty Green, but their athletes just came to play. They're flying all over the field. They recorded a team-high 23 blocks. That's actually tied for the most by any team in the league this season. 15 breaks is tied for the second most by any team in the league this season. Like, breaks are what create these blowout games, and to this point, we had only seen the Shred do that at home. So I think the fact that they can do this on the road now, it just further emphasizes their defensive identity into this playmaking, athletic line that they have.
Adam, not sure you can go wrong, but you taking the O or the D? Which one was better?
You're going to hate me, but I'm going to agree with Daniel on this one and take the defense. Look, it's just the eye candy effect that this Shred team is bringing on a week-to-week basis. As Daniel rightly pointed out, they're missing essentially their 2 best block getters in Clutton and Green. It doesn't matter. Chad Jorgensen, Porter Euler, Ben Ashton, they're all flying around out there making these plays. I could go on another 4 or 5 players. It just feels like every week Salt Lake dredges up another young playmaker on their D-line, and I really think they've founded their identity on defense. For as good as Joe Merrill and Jordan Kerr have been on offense, you can just see this team feeds off of the defensive plays that their D-line provides night in, night out. Almost quarter by quarter, it feels like they get some chest level highlight reel block. It's ridiculous, to be quite honest. Porter Euler went over signage on Saturday night to get a block. They're extending themselves to every edge of the field.
They are fun to watch. And one thing I'm curious about with the Shred going forward, they have not crossed over their O-line guys on D very much all season long. And I'm curious, as we get into the playoffs, do they ever consider, splashing Joe Kerr out of the O-line, or Jordan Kerr, Joe Kerr, you know who I mean, the top O-line players on the Shred? Will they move them over for a point or two here and there, or do they value keeping that O-line fresh? We shall see. Topic number 3, moving toward the week that's ahead. Friday night, Adam, you will have a front row seat for Indy and Madison. And I want to ask you first, Adam, who's the most important player in this game? Is it Indy's Keegan North, or is it Madison's Victor Luo?
I'm going to have to go with the visiting team's Keegan North. He has been kind of a Radicals killer when he's been in the AlleyCats lineup. He is the X factor for their offense. He is kind of the ignition key that gets so much of it going. And especially against this Madison defense, I just feel like he provides a pace setter and a lot of solutions that otherwise are hard to come by against the Radicals in their zone. As we saw Minnesota fall to last night in Madison. The Radicals came back in week 11. They seem to have revived their season, and I think that the AlleyCats on Friday night will need their top offensive producer this season to show up in a big way, as he has before. I think back in 2019 when Indy got their first ever win at Breese Stevens Field, Keegan North made some ridiculous plays for the AlleyCats, and I expect something similar on Friday night.
Daniel, who's more important, North or Luo?
I feel like I could make the case either way, but Keegan North is really he's got this spark plugness to him where he had that huge splashy layout this past weekend against Chicago early on. They got off to a 4-1 lead. to me, it's those Keegan North like big plays when he is really feeling himself. Like that creates rhythm in the entire offense. With Vic on Madison, like he is such a cog in that Madison offense, and if he is playing a slightly off game, like they're going to be in trouble. But he doesn't really make the types of splashy plays that North makes. So I just think this game could be very momentum based. And if Indy wants to get off to a fast start, it's going to have to come from guys like Keegan North just making plays right off the bat.
All right. I did promise the viewers in the open of the show some spice in today's toss-up. So maybe we'll get some in the fourth topic because it hasn't been too spicy so far with you guys agreeing on everything. Now, let's just mention that the last time we talked about Chicago and Minnesota, you guys both said that the Union were going to win the division. That weekend, Minnesota won in Chicago. So this weekend they meet again, and I'm curious who you got this Saturday in St. Paul, the 7-1 Union or the 7-2 Wind Chill? Daniel, you're up first.
Taking my boys. It's Chicago. I just haven't seen the consistency yet from Minnesota. I thought they might be rounding into shape last weekend when we saw them play a great game against Chicago, followed by, of course, a great game against Detroit. But this loss to Madison is definitely a setback and I just don't know. It's raising the same red flags that we've had about Minnesota this whole time. Like, can they put together the exact week-to-week consistency, specifically on offense, to pull out these wins against really good teams in this division? I also think if this game's going to be windy again, I trust Chicago's throwers in the wind again against Minnesota. That was the difference in that early season game when Chicago won 24-21. It was a very windy game, very gusty, and Chicago just had the better throwers. Now they've got this influx of D-line quarterbacks, Dalton Smith, Joe White. Tim Schock actually played O-line this past weekend, but he might get shifted over to defense. All of a sudden, Chicago just has great throwers on both sides of the disc, and I just think that's going to be too much, and I just trust their consistency over Minnesota's at this point.
All right, Daniel going with his boys. I would love for Adam to reveal like a Wind Chill shirt under that AUDL polo right now. Adam, where are we going?
Absolutely not. I don't kiss booty that much, and in the least surprising revelation ever, Daniel is going to choose the Chicago Union to win a game. No, I mean, Chicago is playing great. I love all the new additions that they're getting mid-season, getting a healthy Dalton Smith playing again, getting Tim Schock, Joe White, as you mentioned, are big additions for the Union. However, I saw Minnesota firsthand kind of fall back into, I think, a little bit of the emotional malaise that they're prone to playing in Brees Stevens Field. And I just don't know if that's going to happen to this Minnesota team 2 weeks in a row. They're too talented, and you could see that at times last night in Madison. When they had their opportunities, when they would start feeling their mojo a little bit, they would convert quickly on drives. They would find MJ wide open in the end zone. And I kind of expect the Wind Chill to have a bounce back game against Chicago. I expect them to be locked in. I think that Sunday night on the road, early evening is sort of a weird game to have to mentally prep for. And I expect Minnesota to better prepared this weekend for their matchup against Chicago. So I'm going to take the Wind Chill in this matchup, but I am so looking forward to whatever happens in the Central going forward, whatever round one game we get and whatever championship game we get in this division. It's just really turning into, I think, the four-headed race we are hoping for this year between Chicago, Minnesota, Madison, and Indianapolis. So these last 3 weeks are going to be amazing.
Adam, with about 2 minutes to go on Sunday night, it almost felt like the Radicals were going to collapse and the Wind Chill were going to roll back, and then there was the drop that changed everything. How edgy were you and how edgy were Radicals fans in that moment?
It was eerily similar to the Week 1 game in 2021. It felt the same sort of, we're going to close out this game in the border battle against Minnesota, but here comes these series of mistakes that are oh so familiar but haven't been happening in this game so far. I don't know. Like I say, there's a lot of cosmic energy at play between some of these Central Division games, particularly at Brees Stevens Field when there's just that fan component. Either way, teams kind of have a tendency to either rise to the moment or sort of fall to pieces. And it's interesting to see who can really just compose in those final, 5 minutes of a 2-goal game, as you saw on Sunday night. there's something special about it. I don't know how else to say it. There's I don't want to call it a magic, but there's that aura. There's something to it.
Yeah. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because Madison has a tough game with Indy coming up this week, and it's a 50-50, 60-40 game. Yeah, quick turnaround. And it's tough to imagine the Radicals rising into the number one spot just with the math, and either Minnesota or Chicago is going to get that number one spot. But feels like the Radicals are in position to launch themselves into the playoffs, and then they're a couple games away. And remember, championship weekend is at Breeze Stevens Field. They might have to go on the road in the playoffs to get there, but who knows? Maybe some of that Breeze magic can go on the road with them. And as we've seen, the Union and Winchell are talented, but they're not infallible, and they're not always consistent. So we shall see. Adam and Daniel, thank you so much. Look forward to listening to Swing Pass this week. Adam, have a good call on Friday night with the AlleyCats and the Radicals. We'll be watching. Thanks for joining us for Toss Up today. Coming up next, Matt Smith, Stop Line and Out of Bounds.
What's up, AUDL world, and welcome to another regular season episode of Upline and Out of Bounds. Today, I am joined by one of the league's most exciting players, honestly, Mr. Nick Vogt out of the Minnesota Winchell. How's it going, Nick?
Good. How are you doing, Matt?
I am doing great. I'm excited for the audience to get to know you a little more, and so with that in mind, we're just going to hop right into the intro. So first question for you here, hometown.
Yeah, so I'm from Edina, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, and people may have heard of it nowadays for the youth program there is pretty big now.
Very cool. Current age?
Yeah, so I'm 26, which feels pretty old these days.
Absolutely. College, did you attend college? If so, what degree or major did you pursue?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Wisconsin, Madison, and there I got my degree in material science and engineering.
All right, and outside of being an outstanding Ultimate player, what is your other day job or career path?
Yeah, so I'm an application specialist for an adhesive manufacturer. So basically, I do lab work with glue.
All right, very interesting. We're going to flip over to the Ultimate side here. So why don't you fill everybody in on your Ultimate origin story?
Yeah, so I started playing Ultimate my junior year of high school. My best friend had invited me to come out to tryouts. He had been playing for a few years already, so I started there at Edina High School, and then went on to play 5 years with the Wisconsin Hodags at the University of Wisconsin, and then I've been back in Minneapolis ever since, playing club and AUDL.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. High school to the pros. Current position on the field?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a downfield player, so I do a lot of cutting downfield, mostly on offense. Sometimes I'll play a little bit of defense on the defensive line, I should say. I always play defense. But yeah, primarily on the offensive line.
A man after my own heart, for sure. And last one here, favorite AUDL moment so far?
Yeah, it's got to be our playoff game against Chicago last year. It obviously didn't end the way we wanted it to. We sort of fell apart towards the end of there, but we really showed the league that we were up there competing with the best. We were going blow for blow with the Union. It didn't turn out how we wanted to, but we had a really great game and a really great year with that group. I'd say within that game, one moment that I really enjoyed was Brian Vanuka sent up a big hammer, and I was able to get the right read on it, the right run up to it, and go up big for a sky and score big hold for us. So that was definitely a fun moment in that game.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll get a clip up of it. I remember it. That was pretty sick. All right. Well, now that the audience knows you a little bit better, we're going to jump into today's game. And today's game is fill in the blanks. All right. This one is pretty simple. I'm going to just give you a sentence. You fill in the blank, and also give me a little bit of why. So, first one here. As a downfield receiver, I've seen you score a lot. And I know you've got a lot of good celebrations. So I will fill in this sentence. My favorite spike or celebration is blank.
Yeah, it's got to be the dab. It's been something that goes back a little bit to college. A couple friends of mine, roommates, teammates, Ross Barker, who's in the league still with the Union. We had a lot of fun doing that in practice, doing that together on the Hodags. It's something that I've just carried with me into club and AUDL, obviously. So.
Yeah, love to see it, and I'm sure we'll be seeing it more this year. Another ultimate question here is, I wear number 8 because blank.
Yeah, because Kobe Bryant. So I tore my ACL back in 2017 in college, and then came back for the 2018 season and really wanted to approach my recovery and return with more of a Mamba mentality. And a lot of people use that word, use that phrase, but really just being locked in and wanting to be the aggressor, be the person dominating on the field at all times. And so to sort of remind myself to do that, I went with Kobe's first number in the NBA, number 8.
Very cool. An inspiration to a lot of people, for sure. Sticking with athletics here, I know you're a Minnesota guy, so blank is the most impactful Minnesota athlete of all time. You can cross sports. I know that's a loaded question. I'm trying to give you some time here. It could be football, basketball, baseball, ultimate. Where are you going with this?
I think I'm going to say Randy Moss, and that might be showing my age a little bit. I'm sure people from Minnesota will have other people from previous generations that they'd put ahead of him, but I mean, it's hard to think of a more dominant player in their prime that's played for a Minnesota sports team. I mean, like, really just throw the ball up to him, he's going to come down with it, he's going to make a play. There's that legendary stat line of like 3 receptions, 168 yards, and 3 touchdowns that he put up one game. Like, the guy was just incredible. So a lot of fun to watch, and he's been a huge impact on Minnesota sports for sure.
Yeah, great answer. He was my Blitz 2000 MVP on the N64 as well. All right. Well, thanks for playing the game with me. But unfortunately, we are out of time for today. Before we get out of here, though, any last shout-outs you want to give?
Yeah, I want to shout out Edina High School's Ultimate Team. I know Nate Wohl, the coach there, just picked up, I think, his 200th career win with the team. That's incredible. He's built a dynasty out there. So big props to Edina. Thank you, Nate, for all you've done for Edina Ultimate.
Very cool. Staying true to where you came from. Yeah. All right. Well, unfortunately, like I said, we got to run for today. I know I speak for the rest of the AUDL audience. I'm excited to watch you and the retooled Minnesota take on Chicago and everybody else in the division throughout the season. But for now, back to Evan.
Matt, thank you. Good to hear from Nick Vogt again. I wish we were going to see him on the field, though. Unfortunately, since that recording, Vogt suffered a season-ending injury, so the wind chill will continue to be without Vogt this weekend against the Union. Regardless, should be a tremendous FS2 game of the week this Saturday night. The Central Division top spot at stake, Chicago and Minnesota. That'll do it for the show tonight. My thanks to Adam Ruffner, Daniel Cohen, Matt Smith, Nick Vogt, and of course our editor extraordinaire, Luke Johnson. Thanks to you as well for checking out the program. What a fun stretch of Ultimate ahead in this world. We got the AUDL Playoffs Championship Weekend in August in Madison. World Games going on. Also, World Club Championships coming up later this month in Ohio. But for now, I'm Evan Lepler. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy all the Ultimate coming up this weekend. And I'll talk to you right back here next Wednesday.